at that time as far as his demeanor.
Was he responsive to the questions that you were asking him?
Yes?
And it seemed to you that he understood what you were asking him?
Yes.
On August 20th, 2018, did law enforcement officers go to Yarrowby Farms?
Yes,
And were you one of the officers that went to the farm?
I was.
And what was the purpose of making that trip to the farm?
Well, the purpose was we had information to follow up on. The contact with Mr. Rivera and Malcolm generated a couple leads to follow up on, the car itself and Mr. Rivera. So we needed to follow those leads, I guess, to their logical end.
Was part of the purpose to interview other employees at the farm?
Yes.
And why did you want to interview the other employees?
Well, we thought that they would be a good source of information regarding the car. Didn't know if the car wasn't registered to Mr. Rivera. We didn't know if other people had access to the car, who used the car, where the car would be located, and also to get some more information, just as we did with every other canvas.
Did you have any interaction with Mr. Rivera at the farm?
Not really.
Can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Yeah, I was part of a three-man team that we were interviewing different employees wherever they happened to be. We found one guy operating a skid loader, and we talked to him for a little bit. There were other teams of people doing the same thing. We were collecting DNA samples from everybody at the farm. I really didn't have any contact with Mr. Rivera. I remember at one point I walked into a building. There were some other law enforcement officers there, and there were three, I assume they were workers at the farm, standing in there. I just remember saying, "Yeah, this is the gentleman I saw driving the car in Malcolm." So I identified him, but I didn't talk to him.
At some point, were you made aware that an interview of Mr. Rivera was taking place?
Yes.
And when were you made aware of that fact?
Excuse me. Later that evening, Mr. Rivera had been transported from the farm to the sheriff's office, and I left the farm. I didn't go to the sheriff's office, and I didn't find out until later. It was probably I don't know, 9:30 that I got a call at home that he was still there being interviewed, and he had made a few statements that were pretty interesting, and that I should probably get to the sheriff's office.
Did you participate in that interview at the sheriff's office?
I observed quite a bit. I didn't directly participate in it. I was in watching. I don't even know if over half, probably, I'd say. I don't even remember. I watched a lot. I didn't understand any of it, but I was in and out some too.
How were you able to observe the interview?
With a monitor in an adjacent room.
Was that interview recorded to your knowledge?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to review that recording of the interview?
Not really.
Did you go through the interview subsequent to it happening at any point in time?
Not the entire thing.
Did you create a summary of the breaks that were taken during the interview?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I wasn't really going through the interview for the content, but yeah, I did review it and made note of all the breaks.
Do you speak Spanish, Deputy Kivi?
No.
Now, how long was that recording of the interview?
11 hours maybe, something like that.
You have a copy of Exhibit 10 in front of you.
Yes, I do. Yep,
You recognize that document?
I do.
And what is that?
This is just a little summary I made of the interview breaks when there was like active interviewing and then breaks, I guess. That's.
Have him cover the military times to make sure he understands. The beginning is at 1704. Have him do that.
Deputy Kivi, do you still have Exhibit 10 in front of you?
Yes.
Can you describe the times that are listed in that exhibit?
You mean how it's formatted, you mean, kind of? Or?
Yes.
Okay. I started, the first time here is 5:04 p.m., 17:04 p.m., 5:04 p.m. Recording begins. And then the next line is from 17:06 to, so from 5:06 p.m. to 6:13 p.m., interview in progress. And then off to the side, I have an hour and 7 minutes until 6:13 p.m. There's a break, and Mr. Rivera's left alone in the room.
And when it ends, I'm sorry.
Approximately how many breaks were taken during the course of the interview?
Give me a minute to go through this, I can tell you. How many total?
Yes.
Okay. I'm counting 11.
Deputy, what did you use to calculate the times listed in this document?
I think I used the timestamp on the video.
Deputy Kivi, during the course of the interview, did Mr. Rivera agree to take investigators to Mollie Tibbetts' body?
Yes.
And what happened after that was done? What did you do?
After he agreed,
Yes.
we let him use the restroom. He was handcuffed at that point, and he was placed in my car with it was Mr. Rivera, myself, an FBI agent, and one of the Iowa City police officers who had been interviewing him, Pamela Romero, who acted as our interpreter, and he directed us to her body.
Did you go directly to the location of the body?
No.
Where did you go?
We left Montezuma and went north on V18. We took 415th Avenue east from V18 to 200th Street, which is just maybe 100 feet, gravel road, 100 feet south of Interstate 80 that runs parallel. We got to 200th Street, and he had us turn left, and we went maybe a quarter of a mile to, what would it be, his house, 4123 200th Street. And he had us turn around there, explained that he needed to start there for reference. So once we got him to his house, he kind of knew where he was, and he was able to take us, told us to go south from there, south on 200th. So we drove south on 200th for maybe, 5 or 6 miles to 460th. When we got to 460th, he told us to take a left. We took a left, so we're going east on 460th. We went a couple miles, crossed Highway 21. We kept driving east for several miles till we came to a T intersection, which would be the Poweshiek, Iowa line, gravel road, Poweshiek, Iowa road. T intersection, he had us turn around at that intersection, and we went back maybe a quarter of a mile and told us to stop. And then at that point where we were stopped, on our left, there was standing corn, but there was a long, empty, I wouldn't even call it a field drive, it was just a long lane looked like it'd been like an old driveway or something, just right in the middle of the cornfield. He told us that's where we would find her.
And when you say he, who are you referring to?
Mr. Rivera.
I want to go back to the point you left the sheriff's office. Why is it that you didn't go directly to the field?
He needed to be at his place, apparently, so he kind of, I don't think he knew how to get from the sheriff's office to where her body was located. He had to come from somewhere he was familiar with, which was his house.
And whose idea was it to do that?
Mr. Rivera.
When you arrived at the field with the drive that you described, were you instructed on where the body would be found?
Yes.
What instructions were given?
Mr. Rivera told us that we would find her, be on the east side of that kind of opening that I described. I don't remember if he gave us like a distance, gave us a general area to start looking. So he was left in the car while myself, Special Agent Vileta, Special Agent Potratz, and Sheriff Kriegel and I went into the cornfield.
Were there any other officers at the field with you?
Yes. Chief Deputy Vanderleest was there. Officers Fink and Romero from Iowa City were there, who were our Spanish speakers. Probably forgetting some, but there was more than just us, yeah.
Were you able to locate the body after the initial instructions?
No.
Were you given additional instructions?
Yeah, we had Mr. Rivera exit my car and walked him back to where we had gone into the cornfield. So we went back in, and I don't remember how we got. I don't know how he was instructing whoever he was standing with, but somehow we knew that we needed to kind of change our position a little bit. And once we did, after that second set of instructions from him, she was found within a few minutes.
Was Mr. Rivera taken to the field in your vehicle?
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to observe him after he was taken from the sheriff's office?
Yes.
And how would you describe him during the car ride and subsequent to the car ride?
I guess he was quiet unless he was asked a question or telling us where to turn. He didn't say much. He seemed fairly alert, coherent, and knew exactly where he was.
Did he fall asleep at any point?
No.
Did he appear to be sleepy during your interaction or observation of him?
No.
Deputy Kivi, do you have exhibits 11 and 12 in front of you?
Yes?
And I want to direct your attention to exhibit 11.
Okay?
Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes?
And what does that depict?
That is 460th Avenue, and on the left, there's a field drive with a gate, I guess, or an opening in the fence, and that opening there leads to the long lane that I described.
And could you move to number 12 now?
Okay?
Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, that's the opening in the cornfield.
And what's the significance of that photograph?
That's where we Mollie Tibbetts.
Deputy, during your investigation, did you have, or any other officers have, discussions with local farmers?
I did not, but I know several of our deputies and sheriff did. We received numerous calls from local farmers that were obviously aware of what was going on, and were concerned about what to look for and what to do if they found her. I think they were kind of nervous about maybe her being in a cornfield and harvesting their crops in the fall and maybe finding her.
Did they express concern that this would be a likelihood?
I'm sorry?
Did the farmers express a concern that it would be a likelihood that they would find her?
Sustained.
Deputy, I want to turn your attention back to the exhibits, and in particular, number 14.
Okay.
What does that photograph depict?
That is a hallway within our sheriff's office. That looks like that would be at the far end of that is a door that would be on the south side of the building.
This is from the vantage point of where you enter from the public lobby.
And can you describe, in relation to how you would enter the building, where this is?
Yeah, if you come in the main door on the west side of the building, you come into a big lobby. And I guess if you kind of keep walking straight through the lobby, there's a door that would lead back to a hallway where you keep going. Then there's kind of a L corner. You would turn right, and this would be your view, if that makes sense.
There's several doors in this photograph. Do you know where those doors lead?
Yes. I believe the first door on the left, I think it's either a janitor's closet or the attorney visitation room. The second one is an armory. I might be getting these confused on the left, but one of those near the end is the jail administrator's office, and then there's an opening down there that would lead into the jail. On the right, the very first opening is another short hallway that goes into a break room and a restroom, and then the next few doors on the right are the interview rooms.
And what about the door at the end of the hallway?
The very end, that's
Yep.
an exit.
The interview rooms, those have been the ones used to interview him. Don't forget.
Is that an exit from the building?
Yes.
Are there any other interview rooms in the sheriff's office?
Just the two that are, I guess, kind of next door to each other there on the right.
And would one of those rooms have been the room where Mr. Rivera was interviewed?
Yes.
Would you go to Exhibit 15, please?
Okay.
What's depicted in that photograph?
A door handle leading into, it looks like our lobby from inside the building, like going out.
Is there a lock on that door?
Not going out.
Could you go to Exhibit 16?
Okay.
What does this photograph depict?
That would be, as I was describing earlier, if you come into our building and into the lobby, and you go in, there's a door and a hallway leading from our lobby going east. That L corner that I talked about, this would be that hallway that you would go down. And at the end, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. I'm looking at this wrong. This would be from that same vantage point where that other picture was taken, looking south to the exit door. If you turned and looked the other way, this would be the door that you would come in, if that makes sense.
From the lobby?
Yes. So if you were exiting the building, if you were exiting the secure area of the building, I guess, this would be where you would walk out, and that door would lead you into the lobby.
And would you move to Exhibit 17, please?
Okay.
What's depicted in this photograph?
That's that same door that was in the last picture. This is the door that leads from that hallway into the lobby. That it's secure going in, but it's unlocked going out.
And what about Exhibit 18?
That would be the view from like standing in that doorway looking out into our lobby.
In the doorway that's depicted from Exhibit 17?
Yes.
And the door that can be seen in Exhibit 18, where does that go?
In 18, that goes out into the parking lot outside on the west side of the building.
Is that door locked from the inside?
No.
And could you go to Exhibit 19, please?
Okay.
What does this photograph depict?
That is one of our interview rooms. It happens to be the interview room where Mr. Rivera was interviewed.
And which way does that door open?
It opens in to the right.
And do you know what is all in that room?
Basically a table and a few chairs and a camera.
Thank you, Deputy. I have no further questions for you at this time.
Cross-examination.
Thank you. Deputy, just going back to all those pictures you just reviewed, assuming for a moment that an individual got up and left an interview room and walked down that hallway and out that door, and that individual was in fact Mr. Rivera on that night, how was he going to get home?
He had his phone. Could have called for a ride.
Okay.
We have a lot of people walk home from our jail. I mean, I don't know.
Because the point is that law enforcement took him, right?
Right. I guess to answer your question, I don't know. It would have been dealt with if he would have asked, I guess.
Okay. Did law enforcement ever advise him, to your knowledge, that someone would give him a ride home?
I don't know.
When you first encountered Mr. Rivera on the 16th, he was cooperative, correct?
Yes.
He was answering all your questions, right?
Yes.
I think you stated that his demeanor didn't send up any red flags.
No. You're
Describe
right.
what you mean by that.
He didn't appear nervous. He didn't appear he didn't appear really nervous at all about talking to the police, I guess, and that, you know, an observation I made, I guess.
You took a photograph of him?
Yes,
He was outside the vehicle when you spoke to him?
yes,
And I believe you also said that when you were talking to him, you allowed him to go back to the car?
yes.
What do you mean when you say you allowed him to go back to the car?
Well, I told him it was okay if he needed to get into his car, go ahead. He wasn't restrained or detained or restricted from getting into his car and getting the document that I asked for.
Did he allow you to search his car?
I didn't ask.
Did you photograph the car?
I photographed the exterior of the car, yes.
On that day, August 16, it was clear to you that there was obviously a language barrier between you and he.
Yes.
And he did not try to hide his identity on August 16, did he?
No.
Didn't tell you he was John Budd or someone else.
Nope.
Told you where you could find him at his work,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then he was free to leave, correct?
Yes.
Now, on those 4 days between August 16 and August 20, I believe you said that you were following up on some leads.
Yes.
What were those leads as they pertain to Mr. Rivera?
As far as we had numerous leads we were following up on every single day.
Well, you told Mr. Claver that you wanted to go to Yerby Farms on the 20th because you had other leads and wanted to follow up on Mr. Rivera.
Right.
What other leads were you following up on as it pertained to Mr. Rivera?
During those, well, the car itself was of interest to us because it looked like a vehicle that had been seen in that area, and we thought that whoever happened to be driving that car at the time, if in fact it was that car, was somebody that we needed to talk to, because according to the video, whoever was in that car, the driver or occupant or occupants, should have seen Mollie Tibbetts running on 5 separate occasions while they were driving around circling the neighborhood. And we thought it was kind of odd that, considering the intense media coverage, nobody that we knew of associated with that car had come forward with any information. And we needed to follow up on that.
So again, it was the car that led you to Yerby Farms, nothing else.
The car, right, and whoever happened to be driving, whoever happened to be associated with that car, we needed to find more about.
So August 20, an organized canvass, I think is the term they use, right, was conducted?
Yes,
And I believe there were 12 officers?
that could be. I don't know the exact number.
Well, there were at least 4 officers from Homeland Security or Immigration Customs Enforcement involved as well, right?
There were a few. I don't know the exact number. Could be. Very well could be 4.
Do you know why there were 4 Homeland Security officers called?
I don't. I imagine there was probably some questions about the immigration status of some of the workers. I imagine, but I don't know.
Do you know who was the officer in charge who contacted Homeland Security?
I don't.
Were you there with the group of officers who made entry onto the property of Yerby Farms when you first arrived?
Yes.
Did you hear anyone indicate to anyone on that property that we're not from immigration?
No, I don't remember hearing that.
No one from those 12 officers indicated to anybody there that immigration wasn't going to be a problem?
I don't know. I was with my own little group, and I don't know what was said to everybody.
And isn't it true that the only persons who were detained on August 20th were Hispanics?
That I don't know. I don't.
Did you see
I would
any-
say the majority of the employees that I dealt with, if not all of them, were Hispanic, but I don't know. I didn't deal with every single one.
And each of the Hispanics that you saw were asked for a buccal swab, right?
All the employees were, and yeah, like I said, I don't know. Most of the employees that I saw were Hispanic. If there were other employees that weren't, I didn't see them.
Up to this point, did you have any leads or any tips that the assailant who had visited harm upon Mollie Tibbetts had been a Hispanic?
No.
And you had done canvases of other businesses in the area.
Yes,
Did Blattner Energy out by the interstate, right?
yes, yep,
And they had Hispanic individuals working there.
I believe so.
Did Homeland Security go with you to visit with the Hispanic employees in Blattner Energy?
I don't remember.
Did you visit any of the Manats work sites?
Yes,
And did Homeland Security go with you to visit any of the Hispanic or foreign nationals there?
that I don't remember.
Were you present when Mr. Rivera was asked to go to the police station or the sheriff's office?
I was still on the premises. I don't remember if I was like immediately right there when he was asked.
How many Spanish-speaking individuals were there for law enforcement at Yerby Farms that day?
Well, at least one that I know of, who happened to be in the little group that I was with, and I don't even remember his name.
And there were 4 teams, I believe.
Yeah, I don't really remember.
And then moving to the rest of your day on the 20th. After you were at Yerby Farms, you were done for the day, essentially, until you get the call around 9 o'clock.
Right, I left the farm. I had some personal things I had to take care of, and I got called back, yeah.
And this is Chief Deputy Vanderleest calling you,
Yes,
and he says you probably should come back in. We have some information
Yes.
that's interesting, right?
yes.
What did he tell you that was so interesting?
That Mr. Rivera said that was his car that we saw on video. I don't really remember exactly what he told me.
At this point, do you know who's doing the translation?
I'm sorry?
Do you know who's doing the translation of the interview?
I did not. When I got called at home, no, I did not have any idea.
When you have in your daily work as a detective here, a Spanish-speaking individual, do you usually use an interpreter?
Yes.
And who do you usually use?
The last time was it was a Spanish-speaking detective from Marshalltown. Couldn't tell you his name either right now, but yeah, we do.
Do you try to use someone who's certified, if you can?
Yeah, if we can. Yeah, it's kind of hard to do all the time around here, but yeah, we do the best we can.
Does the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office have access to a Miranda card?
Oh yeah,
Do you routinely use a Miranda card
yes.
every time?
When it's practical, yes.
Well, when would it not be practical in the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office?
I don't know. I'm just saying it probably doesn't happen 100% of the time. In a controlled environment, I have a card with me at all times. We have forms in the office. Yeah, if it's at all possible, I would read it off a card. I'm not saying I've done it every single time, but yeah, the vast majority, I would say yes.
In fact, the State of Iowa Department of Public Safety issues Miranda cards, right?
I have cards that are issued by a different entity, but yeah, they all say the same thing.
And you said the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office has forms?
Yes.
What are those forms? Describe them for me, please.
It's just a white sheet of paper with the rights, just as the Miranda rights, with a little, check here if you understand this right, and at the bottom, do you understand all your rights as I've read them to you, yes or no? With these rights in mind, do you still wish to speak to me, yes or no? Sign here, date and time, witness, date and time, and on the back is the exact same thing in Spanish.
So in the Sheriff's Office on August 20th, any officer would have had access to the Poweshiek County Miranda form
Yes,
in English and in Spanish?
yes,
And that form could have been presented to Mr. Bahena if the officer elected to.
yes.
In your review of the file, have you seen any such form used in this case?
I have not.
Do you carry that form with you in a briefcase or a satchel?
I have a bunch of them in my car, yeah.
Was that the same car you took out to the scene where the body was discovered?
Yes,
And Miss Romero, Officer Romero, would have had access to that form as well?
yes.
Do you know if she used that form when she gave the Miranda in the car?
I don't know.
Now, you talked about the route and everything that was taken to find Miss Tibbetts' body in this cornfield. Then after the body was discovered and Mr. Vileta took you all there, he was brought back to the car, right?
Yes,
And he was placed in the back seat of the car
yes.
with Miss Romero?
I'm sorry.
With Officer Romero?
Yes, yes. I think, I believe, yeah, after we had him come out of the car, he gave some clarification on where to find Mollie Tibbetts. Then he was put back in the car with Fink and Romero and left there. And I don't know what they talked about, but we were out. I don't know what they talked about or what happened. It was recorded, but I don't know.
Okay. So you don't know if a second Miranda warning or a Miranda warning was even given in the backseat?
Well, I was told later, yeah, but I wasn't present for it,
What were you told?
that he was given his Miranda rights at some point.
Do you know if that was before the body was located or after?
I think it was after, but I don't remember.
Okay. So you have a camera in your car?
Yes,
And that camera was switched on exactly when you arrived at the location, right?
yeah, I don't remember exactly when. I know it was turned on at some point. I don't remember exactly when.
What we do know is it wasn't turned on when you left the sheriff's office.
Right.
So we have no video evidence of the route you took and how you got to the body, do we?
Right.
And why is that?
It just wasn't turned on.
And you have
I don't
a
know.
homicide suspect in the back seat talking about how to get to the body and you didn't turn the camera on?
No, I didn't.
What triggered your mind to flip the camera on at some point?
I don't know. That they were going to have a conversation in my car. I don't know. I turned it on and
So we could agree then that everything, to the best of your knowledge, that Mr. Rivera told you and taking you to the body itself all occurred before Mr. Romero read him his Miranda rights in the back of the car.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
To the best of your knowledge and recollection, Mr. Vileta taking law enforcement to the location and ultimately to the body happened before the second Miranda warning and interview with Ms.
Yes.
Romero.
Yes.
Okay. Now, this was a large cornfield, right?
Yes.
Do you know how many acres it was?
No.
Who owns the cornfield?
I'd be guessing, but
Okay. Did that farmer ever call you and indicate to you that he was concerned about finding a,
I don't know if he was one that called or not.
and not all the evidence from Ms. Tibbetts has been located, correct? I mean, we're missing a Fitbit, right?
Right.
We're missing a phone or an iPod, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Anything else we're missing that we knew she had in her possession?
No, not that she had in her possession. We're still missing some other items that we'd like to find. Whatever.
A murder weapon?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And no one has come forward after the harvest and said, I found these items, have they?
No.
And that includes all these farmers that have called in, right?
I assume so. Yep.
And you had 7 officers out there in this cornfield that day looking for Ms. Tibbetts, and you were having a hard time finding her, fair?
Yes.
And you knew the general area where she was, fair?
Yes.
It took Mr. Vileta to pinpoint the location, fair to say?
Yes.
What triggered you to do Exhibit 10, the times where there were breaks?
I was asked to,
By who?
prosecutors in this case.
When you reviewed the video, you certainly saw times where Mr. Bahena showed signs of being tired, right?
I'm sorry?
You saw signs that Mr. Bahena was tired on that video, right?
Probably, yeah.
You saw times where he actually fell asleep, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Did anyone ever talk to you while you were there? Or make you aware that Mr. Bahena had family in the lobby of the sheriff's office?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
When you went to Yereby Farms on the 16th, now I'm jumping around and I'm sorry, you walked into the room and pointed out that that's the same guy I stopped on the, I'm sorry, terrible question, scratch that. When you were at Yereby Farms on the 20th, you walked in and said that's the same guy I stopped and talked to on the 16th, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I wasn't actually called in there to do that. I just happened to walk in and saw him there, yeah.
You got a picture on your phone, right?
Right.
And you were comparing the picture on the phone to the individual you were seeing, right?
Probably, yeah.
Did you walk up and take his hat off?
I don't remember. Could have.
Did you rub his head, physically touch him?
I don't think so.
That's all I have, thank you.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. Deputy Kivi, if Mr. Rivera had family at the sheriff's office during his time being interviewed, where would they have been?
In the lobby, I assume.
And do you know whether Mr. Rivera had his cell phone during the interview?
He did.
And so if he wanted to leave, his family could have given him a ride home?
I assume so, sure.
On August 16th, when you made first contact with Mr. Rivera, how did that interaction end?
It just kind of ended. I asked him a few basic questions. It was probably easily less than 5 minutes. I got in my car and left.
Did, at any point in your communication with Mr. Rivera, did he indicate that he did not want to speak to you?
No.
Mr. Freeze asked you about Mr. Rivera trying to hide his identity during that interaction. What exactly did Mr. Rivera do to identify himself?
He produced that document with his name and date of birth on it. I saw a name and date of birth. I asked, "Is this you?" And he said yes.
And do you know what type of document that was?
I don't.
Did you stop Mr. Rivera on that day?
As far as like a traffic stop with lights and
Yes.
like a typical, no. I followed him until he stopped and engaged him there.
Deputy, you were also asked on cross about interviewing employees at Yereby Farms and interviewing employees at Blattner Energy. Was there a difference in law enforcement's approach to those two employers?
As far as
You knew that Mr. Rivera worked at Yerby Farms?
Yes.
Was that a difference between the two in the law enforcement approach?
I'd say so, yeah, I guess. I mean, we had actual leads to follow up on at Yerby Farms.
Did you have any leads concerning the energy company?
Not really. We were, it was just a canvas, part of the canvas.
Deputy Kivi, did you have any active role in interviewing Mr. Rivera?
Not really. I was present for a lot of it. We had some questions, I guess, but no, I was in and out a lot. I would say I don't even know what percentage I watched, but I got there a few hours into it. I know I was there watching for, I don't know, a few hours. I couldn't even tell you how much, though.
Did you have the opportunity to observe Mollie Tibbetts' body when it was located?
Yes.
How would you describe that?
How would I describe the scene? How would I describe how the body was positioned?
The position of the body?
It appeared to be on her back, with her legs kind of spread apart, covered in corn leaves, corn stalks.
Had the body been buried?
No.
Was it on top of the ground?
Yes.
Was anything covering it?
Just some corn leaves and corn stalks.
Do you have Exhibit 13 in front of you?
Yes.
What's depicted in that photograph?
Mollie Tibbetts' body in the cornfield.
And do you know when that photograph was taken?
Morning of the 21st, August 21st.
And does that photograph depict the body how you observed it on that date?
Yes. Minus the corn leaves.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything else with this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Kivi, you're excused. State may call its next witness.
Our next witness is Trent Vileta.
Sir, I'll swear you in before you're seated. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead and be seated if you would, please.
Give me just a second, James. All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Trent Vileta. It's V as in Victor, I-L-E-T-A.
And how are you employed?
I'm an agent with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation.
How long have you been so employed with DCI?
I've been with the DCI since 2006.
I think the judge is familiar with the role of the DCI, but briefly describe how you become involved in cases.
Sure. We're a state agency. We're an assist agency, so we provide assistance and expertise to departments that may not have that expertise. I work for the Major Crimes Unit, which is basically the violent crimes unit for the state.
And where are you? Where's your duty station?
In Cedar Rapids.
All right, you're in zones in DCI, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and yours is Southeast Iowa?
Yes, there's 4 zones. I'm Zone 4, so we're basically from the Quad Cities, west to Cedar Rapids, and then south to the border.
Which would include Poweshiek County.
Yes.
Just outline your training and experience for us, please.
Before the DCI, I was a police officer in the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from 1996 to 2001. So that's where I was certified. I attended a 6-month police academy there. I did a transfer from there to the Cornfield, Iowa Police Department, which basically entailed taking the ILEA test and passing the requirements through ILEA. I was in Cornfield from 2002 to 2006, and then the DCI. Before I was in law enforcement, I was a United States Army Reservist, attended the military police school, and I was got my honorable discharge from the Army in 2003.
You've worked death cases in your capacity as an MCU agent with DCI, is that right?
Yes.
Were you assigned to assist Poweshiek County in the, initially at least, in the disappearance and search for Mollie Tibbetts?
Yes, I was.
When did you become involved?
Became involved, it was Friday the 20th of July 2018.
And how would you become involved exactly?
My supervisor called Rick Ron. He said that Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office had requested our assistance. They had a missing persons case that they had just started.
Did you have the assistance of other agents in DCI?
I did. On Friday, I was by myself. We have to kind of evaluate to see what type of case it is. It wasn't until the next Monday that we started bringing in additional resources.
So you had DCI at your disposal, at least the agents that were assigned to you.
Yes.
Did you also have assistance from federal law enforcement?
Yes, we did. That Saturday would be the 21st. I called that FBI office in Des Moines. The FBI was phenomenal to us. They provided basically unlimited resources for us. I know they were getting bad press at the time, but their agents on ground level all the way up to Washington were phenomenal for us.
Okay. Did you also have the assistance, not only the FBI, but of Homeland Security?
Homeland Security did help. It was not as much. They certainly made themselves available to us if they were needed, but Homeland Security not so much until towards the end.
All right. So initially, Agent Vileta, just give us a sense of the scope of what was happening in the search for Mollie Tibbetts.
Sure. The Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office, when I arrived on Friday, they were doing pretty much everything according to the book. I arrived at the fire department. There were, I estimated 150 minimum people lined up into teams, search teams. Like I said, I kind of felt lonely at first because it kind of took on a larger scale than I imagined. But that first search, the teams were out searching near her residence where she was staying. There were four-wheelers out in cornfields. I remember there were even people in canoes. There was a very active stream by her house. There were people in canoes and kayaks going for miles down the stream. So from the very get-go, I think the Sheriff's Office did a fantastic job of keeping things organized and getting the following leads and searching in logical locations.
All right. So the area in search for Mollie Tibbetts is potentially infinite. Is that right?
It was. As time went on, especially once the FBI began to show up, and we started getting better data, better information, then the search continuously expanded throughout the county.
And were the areas that you searched, was that kept, did somebody keep track of that?
Yeah, so what we did is we had very large sheets of paper. I know there's a term for them. We kept them on the wall. Basically, they were overheads of the county, the city of Brooklyn, and then like other cities like Guernsey, other cities within the county. What we did is we canvassed specifically locations that were important to us, but we were very organized in how we did it. An FBI agent actually controlled the searches, which kept it very well organized for us. And we were able to mark locations that we searched in different ways and then locations that we needed to search, we would often go back to those until they were done.
So this is in July of 2018, this is occurring, correct?
Yes,
In Iowa.
yes,
Lots of corn in the field,
everywhere,
and other crops like soybeans, would that be true?
yes.
All right. At some point, would the corn be harvested?
It would. I grew up here. I was never a farmer, but I always have a good idea I had a lot of relatives that were farming, so I knew that the fields would be harvested usually late October, around that time.
And when the corn is harvested, it's cut, correct?
Yes,
Which would expose the ground
yes,
more so, is that right?
that's correct.
Let's jump forward to the date that Mollie Tibbetts was located. That was on August 20th, is that correct? Or 21st?
August 21st, yes.
We've already heard a description from Officer Kivi about that. If Mollie Tibbetts would not have been found at that point, would law enforcement have continued to search?
We were, if I remember correctly, we were planning expanding our search even that day. Before we started talking to the defendant, we had no real expectations that we were going to find her anytime soon. So we were actually talking of expanding our searches even further than where we were.
And would that have expanded into the fall after corn was removed?
It would have. I know the farmers were pretty anxious. Nobody wanted to be the one to find her. And I had heard, I remember it was the sheriff or chief deputy had told me once that the farmers were just worried that they would have to go really slow during harvest for fear of coming across Mollie.
Was that just a general information consensus that you had received from other people that lived here in Poweshiek County?
It was. We talked to a majority of the people, I think, in the county.
Okay. I want to judge if I could, there are 3 maps that are on the flash drive that I have not printed. I'm going to discuss those with Agent Vileta at this time. You can either look on his computer as he clicks them.
I can see.
Is that okay? Okay. All right, you indicated areas were searched, is that right?
Yes.
The Exhibit 3, which is, I'm sorry, not Exhibit 3. Hang on a second. Exhibit 6. Can you pull that up?
Yes, I have it.
What are we looking at here in Exhibit 6?
So that's the city of Brooklyn. All the red dots on there are houses that have actually been canvassed. So those are locations that we had been to. The yellow on there are locations where there's potentially video. A lot of them are businesses. Some would be houses that we may have seen cameras on.
All right, so this would have been a door-to-door canvas in Brooklyn?
It was, and it was. We always gridded it out so we wouldn't miss a place. And then, as a team would come in, the FBI agent assigned to this would add the stickers to the map.
Okay. And this was a map that was created by law enforcement?
Yes, it was.
So you knew where you had talked to people and where you had searched?
Yes, you know, we had a lot of resources, but we also didn't want to waste anybody's time. So it was very, we tried to be very thorough as far as our organization on these searches.
I want to take a look at State's Exhibit 7. I believe this has been identified as the Deep River Guernsey area, is that right?
That's correct.
Again, is this a map that was created to detail the canvas that was done in this area?
Yeah. So the some of our initial findings were Mollie's phone had shut off, and it wasn't a specific area; it's more of a general area. So again, it was a canvas of that area where her phone might have been, just to obtain information. So the red dots that you would see on that map would be houses that we had teams had gone to and talked to.
And then State's Exhibit 8 What is that what is that representative of?
So this is agricultural fields that we had searched. The FBI, again, fantastic resources. We used unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, to search a lot of this. Volunteers with canines would come out. The sheriff even rode in a gyrocopter that looked like it was gonna spiral to his death at any moment. So hospitals would fly over with if they had extra gas in their helicopters. We had a lot of aerial searches that we could cover a lot of ground with that. And then plus we had the fire departments that were walking a lot of these fields.
All right, Exhibit 8, is that representative of how it was documented when certain fields or areas were searched?
Yes, this would be then, there were several maps, so one map would be residences, one map would be like the farm fields, that sort of thing.
I
So
just
this would
want-
be representative.
I just want to be clear with the judge that Exhibit 8 is one such map, correct?
Just one of several, yes.
There are several other ones that look similar that document the area.
That's correct.
How close did law enforcement come to searching the cornfield where Mollie Tibbetts was ultimately located?
I can't remember exactly how close the search would have went, but our canvassing took us within approximately 2 houses down. That would have been an area that would have expanded. We were kind of searching into our canvas areas, if that makes sense. Is we got an area canvassed, we would try to search that area.
And then going back to Exhibit 7, the Deep River Guernsey area, was that near where Mollie Tibbetts was ultimately located?
Yes.
All right, and to make sure we fully understand this, go to Exhibit number 4. Do you have that? I had,
Yes.
I'm not sure if that one's printed, but this one is not printed, Judge. I'm sorry. So the address that is on Exhibit 4 is 2478 460th Avenue. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Is that the address and location where Mollie Tibbetts was located?
Yes,
Guernsey is a town we can see just northwest of that. Is that right?
that's correct.
And Deep River is a town that is southwest of that area.
Yes.
Okay. In relation to Yereby Farms, do you know how far it is from 2478 460th Avenue to Yereby Farms, as far as drive time?
I think drive time was about 10 minutes.
And then State's Exhibit number 5, take a look at that. Is this just a closer aerial of the area where Mollie Tibbetts was located?
Yes,
Again, the address of 2478 460th Avenue is on that. Is that correct?
that's correct.
How near the Iowa County line is that location?
Maybe a couple hundred yards.
Just inside Poweshiek County.
Yes, that's correct.
In that area where she was located, are there homes that are occupied?
There is, not many. It's largely woods and farm fields, but there are houses nearby.
You indicated, Agent Vileta, that there were aerial drones that were utilized in the search for Mollie Tibbetts.
That's correct.
Had she not been found, would those have continued to be used?
We, yes, and any means possible. I forgot the State Patrol is providing their aircraft whenever we asked for it too. So we had all different kinds of means to continue to search.
And my point is that those means, those resources would have continued to be available to you had she not been located.
Absolutely, yes.
And would the search, at least aerially, have been made easier once the crops would have been harvested?
It would have, obviously, just, it's hard to see down into corn rows from there.
Okay, I want to shift gears a bit. we've talked about the initial investigation and the scope of it. Was there a surveillance video that was discovered that assisted in the investigation of the disappearance of Mollie Tibbetts?
There was, yes.
Where did that surveillance video come from, if you recall?
It was just part of a canvas. We had teams go around to try to identify where cameras were. Can't remember the address exactly, but it was in the northeast corner of Brooklyn.
It was on Des Moines Street, is that right?
Des Moines Street, yes.
The home of Logan Collins?
That's correct.
Did someone from DCI view that surveillance video?
We did. We had teams looking at all the surveillance videos. And I believe that the chief deputy and one of our agents were the team that was looking at this one.
And there was at some point on the surveillance video, can a jogger be seen?
They can, but very briefly.
All right, and just looking at the video, can you identify it as Mollie Tibbetts?
No.
That's a dark figure.
Right.
Did that figure appear to be running?
Yes.
And that would have been in the area? I'm sorry?
Let me stop you there. Let's take our morning recess at this point. Okay. Take a 15-minute recess. We'll be back at that time. Thank you, everyone.
It's falling